A couple years ago, a friend of mine came to me and said, I got a book and you need to read chapter, I think it was 11. And he handed me this book called D-Day, and it's like this thick. And I said, are you giving me a gift or are you giving me a job? He said, just chapter 11. Okay. I ended up reading the whole book. It's a great book called D-Day by Stephen Ambrose. Stephen Ambrose is most famous for writing Band of Brothers. And so I read chapter 11 or whatever it was. And in it, he tells this story. When he was a young reporter in the 60s, he had a chance to interview Dwight Eisenhower about D-Day. And when he finished his interview with Eisenhower, Eisenhower asked, I hear you're from New Orleans. Have you ever had a chance to interview Andrew Jackson Higgins about D-Day? And he said, no, Higgins died before I got there. Why? He says, oh, that's too bad, because Andrew Jackson Higgins won World War II for us. I'm reading going, Andrew what? I know Andrew Jackson. I've heard of that name, but it's got nothing to do with World War II. Who's Andrew Jackson Higgins? So he tells the story. And again, it's not just somebody saying, the commander of the Allied Armed Forces said, Andrew Jackson Higgins won World War II for us. So here's the story. He was a boat builder in New Orleans. He had an idea for a small boat, brought it to the Department of Navy and said, I think you're going to need these. And the Navy said, no, we can't use small boats. We got to get across the Atlantic, the Pacific, the English Channel. Small boats won't do it. I think you're going to need it. No, we don't. Goes back a second time. No. Third time. No. D-Day gets closer. And as they're putting the plans together, they start realizing that the battleships and destroyers are only going to get the troops to about a mile off the sand. And in order to get from a mile off the sand onto the sand, they're going to need a whole bunch of small boats. But D-Day is getting closer, and D-Day had a very tight window. They couldn't change it. They didn't know how they were going to get it done in time, so they actually got desperate enough that they put word out to all the boat builders in the country, have you got an idea to help us out with this? And Andrew Jackson Higgins goes, ahem. And he shows them the plans once again, and they go, it's perfect. And he goes, I know. Been trying to tell you this for 2 years. And they go, we don't even know if we're going to have time to build them. He goes, no problem. I knew you were going to need them. I've already begun to retrofit all my factories to build them, and I've got half the supplies on hand. Dude. Right? I mean, whoa. And in 2 weeks, they start building these boats. Now, if you've ever seen a World War II movie about D-Day, like the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, you've seen those boats. The Navy called them the CV-9H2 or something like that, I don't know. But nobody's ever called them anything but Higgins boats. Flat bottom, flat high sides, flat front, 20, 30 troops. They go in, they hit the beach. The front drops. And a bunch of boys save the world. Most important day of the 20th century. And it couldn't have happened without a stubborn boat builder in New Orleans going, I know you don't think you need small, but you do, and I'm going to work on it, even though you don't know you need it yet. Do I have to translate it? See, the Higgins boat commander might have gone in that day and looked back at a battleship and gone, man, I wish I could be a captain of a battleship. Or, dude, I hear the admirals on the destroyer. Man, instead I'm stuck here on this Higgins boat smelling and everything else and everybody's shooting at me. But the Higgins boat commander could do something that day that the captain on the destroyer couldn't do. Because before they got in that boat that day, he went to every single troop under his command, every one of whom he knew by name, and said, I need your letter to home. And then he added his own letter to home and put it in a strongbox by his bunk. And if he survived the day, he went back and got those letters and gave the ones back to those who survived, and the others, about half, he had to send back to families. And the commander of the Higgins boat could do something with those letters that the captain on the destroyer or battleship couldn't. He could add his personal note that said, I knew your son, your brother, your husband. I fought alongside him, Maybe in some circumstances, he died in my arms. He talked about you all the time. He carried your picture in a pocket next to his heart and pulled it out and showed it to everybody he could. I don't know what your loss is, but I am experiencing it myself because I loved him too. See, we get to do that. We get to be there in people's lives at moments like that. When I was at a conference 2 weeks ago, in the middle of the conference, my pants buzzed. And when I checked it afterwards, it was because a woman who used to attend our church and now goes to a big church where they don't know the pastor had tried to commit suicide, and so her husband called me, the last pastor they had. Well, they were in a home group and they loved their home group, and the home group stepped up and helped them out. But in that situation, they needed a pastor too. And they knew they could still call me. We get to do that. So don't let anybody ever convince you that your role in the kingdom is unnecessary. Now, we need the others too. We couldn't have done it without the destroyers. We couldn't have done it without the parachuters coming in and dropping supplies after we got on the beach. There's not a single element that was used that day that you could have taken out and made it a success. And it's the same way in the church. We need the big, we need the small, we need the parachurch, we need everybody. And we need everybody performing at the top of their game, working together and not putting each other down. Including, don't put yourself down for commanding a Higgins boat. Because as a fellow Higgins boat captain, let me tell you, what we do is as vital to the kingdom of God as what anybody else is doing. And I just want to thank you for doing it well.